So I've been hearing that more people say they have half matches and success with transplants.
Yeah.
Recently, is that the way you're going with that now, or do you still try and find a full match?
That's a great question. So again, for those folks who may not be thinking or may not have thought about transplantation, we've talked a little bit earlier today about graft versus host and graft versus leukemia, the cells coming in recognizing our body as foreign, graft versus host. To minimize that, we try and make sure that the cells coming in match us as best as they can. So we look for a matched donor. And typically the best matched donor is an identical twin, of course, because they're identical. But of course they won't give you graft versus leukemia because they're identical. So they're not as good as you might think, because they're identical to you. So they're not going to see any bit of you as foreign, including your cancer. Right? Yeah. Does that make sense, or not really? If you're completely identical, they'll see your MDS or AML or leukemia or whatever it is, they'll see it as just a normal cell.
Would you use an identical?
No, we do not use identical donors. We don't. A sibling, a brother or sister who's matched, is pretty well matched, but they're not identical. And so we're hoping that they'll see your MDS or AML or whatever it is as foreign and kill it. So sibling is still preferred. Why is it preferred? Because we have the most experience. Because our experience with sibling donors goes back to the 1970s. So in the year 2000, late 1990s, different clinical groups around the world decided to start using half matches. And initially they were very difficult transplants, lots of complications, lots of graft versus host disease, not very successful. Then people worked out a way of using half matches, and I won't go into the details of why that happened. I'm very happy to do so, but we'll skip over that technical issue. And they started to become more acceptable, safer. But our long-term experience with haplos, half-matched transplants, is only a decade or two. It's not as long as siblings. And so fewer units have experience of large numbers, and fewer units have long-term safety data. So most units would still go for a sibling, if available, then an unmatched, fully matched donor, unrelated fully matched donor, and then as a third choice a haplo. In some countries it's not possible to have either of those first two. So in China, where you have very small family sizes, you're not going to get a sibling. And they don't have registries of unrelated donors. You're not going to get an unrelated donor. The only donor is a haplo. So in China they're very common. My children, for example, would never get an unrelated donor. There are only two boys. My wife's French, so you know our gene pool is very mixed, and so they may have to rely on a haplo if they were unfortunate enough to need a transplant. So we are using them more. Certain countries are using them more than others. Certain units are using them more than others. But internationally it's accepted that siblings would be the first, unrelated would be second, haplos would be third, followed by haplo. The other kind of transplant is a cord transplant, where you can use cord blood stem cells from a baby. They're also done. They're equivalently new to half-match transplants. So 80% of Caucasian patients will have an unrelated donor. 4 out of 5. So if a sibling is older, in their 70s or late 60s, or have ill health or whatever, and you have a perfectly matched unrelated donor who's in their 20s, most transplant units would choose the unrelated donor.